So I'm going to highlight our agenda today. We're going to start with a quick refresher on the different types of fiduciary services that are offered in the market. And then we're going to look at one of the most common questions that we see, the named versus delegated fiduciary question. And then we're going to transition over to talk about what we're seeing from service providers offering in the market today. And then we'll close up helping you identify situations you can showcase your value to your clients or prospective clients. But before we begin, I want to start with a poll. All right, this is a true or false poll, and feel free to answer this one in the chat function. I'm going to start us off. In fiscal year 2021, the Employee Benefits Security Administration under the Department of Labor restored more than $2.4 billion for plans, participants, and beneficiaries as a result of investment selection and monitoring failures in retirement plans. So we'll give you a moment to put your response in the chat. And there's a couple of things going on here in this question. Do we have the right agency with the EBSA? How about that dollar amount? 2.4 billion, that's a pretty big dollar amount. And then finally, the result. Is it because of investment selection and monitoring failures? So Jessica, what's the resounding answer we're seeing in the chat function?
We're seeing false, Aaron.
All right. We've got some experts on the line because that answer is false. So the EBSA was the correct agency, and the $2.4 billion of collections was also the correct number, but it was not due to investment selection and monitoring failures. You know, it was actually because of plan operations and incorrect administration by the plan sponsor. And we've got a link to the DOL website that Jessica is going to cut and paste into the chat function for us. This PDF is a great tool that I've used in my travels for many years. I think you'll find some value in showing this to your clients. It's going to really showcase the potential risk of incorrectly operating a qualified retirement plan. And then if you actually choose to go to outsource 316 services and hire a 316 administrator, I think it's going to help you justify the cost and the utilization. Anything else there we want to share, Jessica?
Okay, Aaron, don't forget about the IRS, right? The IRS has also posted their top 10 failure list for voluntary correction program. The failures that the IRS has highlighted fall into a few categories. We see transactional failures such as impermissible in-service withdrawals, failure to withhold loan payments, not performing RMD distributions. We see a category of eligibility failures, adopting a plan that they're not legally able to, or when a plan fails to include eligible or exclude ineligible employees. They've listed correctional failures, such as not acting on ADP ACP test failures, or failure to provide the minimum top heavy benefit. There's also a few plan document failures as well, failure to amend the document to new versions or follow the plan's definition of compensation. All of these failures, along with the Department of Labor failures, result in costly correction and time investment for plan sponsors.
Well, thanks for throwing that in. So both the IRS and the Department of Labor, it seems like majority of the items that typically rise to the top of the list have to do with the plan operations and the administration. So let's jump back in and revisit the different fiduciary services that are available out in the market. I think everybody on this call is really familiar with the investment fiduciary arm. So we've got our 321 investment advisor and our 338 investment manager. And I think it's just really important at a high level to remember the 321 investment advisor, that is shared responsibility, shared responsibility to recommend, select, and replace funds. And with that shared responsibility, ultimately the plan sponsor is the one that's going to have to approve any changes. Whereas when we shift over to the 338 investment manager, that shared responsibility goes away. And now that 338 investment manager has full authority in terms of selection, monitoring, and replacement of funds. So quite the difference between the two. So I always remember 321 is shared responsibility, 338 is that full authority. Now, on the other side of the coin, what we're focused on today is 316 plan administration. And that's really the day-to-day tasks that plan sponsors need to execute that are associated with operating the retirement plan. And Jessica, I'm going to have you chime in real quickly and maybe give us a couple high-level examples of those day-to-day tasks that we see 316 plan administrators execute.
Thanks, Aaron. So as Aaron said, the 316 Administrative Fiduciary Services is typically a service that's a provider that's hired to assume those administrative tasks on behalf of the plan sponsor for 401k plans. Those services could be transactional support, such as approving loans and distributions, signing and filing the Form 5500, providing annual notices to participants, and more.
Perfect. And I think one of the things I'd like to jump in and share real quick too is that the 316 plan administrator doesn't always have to be an organization like a FuturePlan. Often we see the 316 plan administrator as the plan sponsor. All right, so the number one question Jessica and I receive, has to do with types of fiduciaries. So the number one question we receive is, are we a named fiduciary in the plan document when we're serving as a 316? And when we get that question, I always stand back a little bit and really ask the advisor or the wholesaler or the sponsor that's approached us with that question, really trying to figure out what's needed to be accomplished. What are you looking for in terms of delivery for your client? Because when we look into the definition of named fiduciaries, that's the 402A. And so if you look at the graphic to the right, the 402A named fiduciary is at the top of the fiduciary pyramid and actually outranks the 316 and the 338 and all other fiduciaries on the plan. And that 402A named fiduciary, I think it's important that we remember that 402A named fiduciary has control over all aspects of the plan, including vendor selection and monitoring. And so what we've started to see in the market's evolved a lot in the last 3 to 5 years. So we're seeing a new approach take precedence, and that is the delegated fiduciary approach. And Jessica, I'm going to ask you to chime in a little bit about the delegated fiduciary approach, what that means and why that may be beneficial to advisors.
Thanks, Aaron. As Aaron said, we've seen the 316 service offerings begin to mature. And those offering services in the market have become more focused on this delegated fiduciary. This opt-in to defined or delegated administrative tasks allows the plan sponsor to maintain that control over most aspects of the plan while choosing what tasks to outsource based on their individual needs. We're seeing this approach more and more as the service provides meaningful task assistance for employees and participants in the plan. The majority of the service providers in this space are TPA firms who provide 316 services. They're able to leverage their knowledge in administration and plan sponsor responsibilities by offering a delegated 316 service offering to the clients. Aaron, what are you seeing in the market from the advisors?
Yep, no, I appreciate that. I think the feedback that we receive from advisors in the market is definitely that preference for the delegated fiduciary approach. And I think that because we're eliminating any potential conflicts of interest. We can create some hard feelings, as advisors, if we turn around and hire a named fiduciary, and that named fiduciary then benchmarks not only us as the advisor, but some of the other vendors that we've recommended as part of the solution. And when you think of 316s in the market, I think we're seeing the vast majority of 316 service providers are TPA or third-party administration firms. And historically, third-party administrators really don't have the skill set or the expertise to be well-versed in the 321, 338 functions, plan benchmarking, and really things that the advisor is responsible for at a high level. So we're really seeing that delegated fiduciary approach, really take precedence in the market. All right, it's time for our second poll. We've got another true or false question, and you're welcome to place an answer in the chat. So hiring a third-party administrator or record keeper satisfies your client's 316 fiduciary duties, true or false? Let me take a sneak peek at the chat function here too. Looks like everybody is leaning towards false on this one, and that is correct. Third-party administrators or record keepers, they still require plan sponsor oversight unless they are specifically contracted as a 316 fiduciary. And this is where I think I would advise all of you to spend some time performing due diligence on service providers. I can't stress enough, read the contract, because that contract's going to spell out the different terms, the conditions, and the scope of the arrangement. And Jessica and I see so many different flavors of 316 in the market, whether it's one or two meaningful tasks or much more robust solutions that are out there. And so what we did at FuturePlan is we actually created a buyer's guide. And that buyer's guide is going to help you ask questions as you're vetting and interviewing potential service providers. And Jessica is going to place that link in the chat for us. And I'd encourage you to take a peek at that when you get a chance. Feel free to download it and use that, as you're vetting potential service providers in this space. I think this is a good lead into our next section, really what we're starting to see in the market with service providers. I'm going to start us off. We're seeing a lot of straight through processing from some of the more reputable service providers in the industry. And straight through processing is an exchange of information from one party to another. And it really allows you to create a consistent, repeatable, memorable experience. We even use straight through processing here at FuturePlan for many of our functions. But what I would tell you is that firms that are using straight through processing, it places a really high reliance on the quality of the data that's coming in. And I'm going to stop there because Jessica's going to share some thoughts on data here in a minute. So I don't want to steal her thunder. But what we're also seeing in the market, we're really seeing this hesitancy to take a fiduciary position. And because of that, we're seeing a move or a pivot to administrative fulfillment solutions. And these are real valuable tools and resources that service providers have made available to your clients to help them fulfill their fiduciary duties as a 316. And an example of that might be notice delivery. A lot of service providers are adding fulfillment services that your client can upload notices to and push out to participants, or they may push out notices directly. But in that environment, I think we just also need to remember there still is oversight needed from the plan sponsor. So these are great tools that allow them, to help fulfill those duties. And then lastly, we're starting to see some 316 accommodation. This might be where one or two tasks are provided by a service provider in a 316 setting. There's a whole universe of 316 tasks that are available out there, but we're really seeing service providers kind of drill down on one or two key delivery items that add value to plan sponsors. And so Jessica, I'm going to stop there and let you jump in and share some of your thoughts as well and observations that you're seeing from service providers in the market.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So 316 service offerings in the market tend to be focused on the bullet points on the right-hand side related to more of the transactional and participant communications. This includes the approving and signing off on the distributions and loans and offering a mailing resource for participant notices. As experts in plan administration and the roles a plan sponsor is responsible for, there's not a lot of emphasis on the potential consulting capabilities of a 316. And what I mean by consulting is leveraging the expertise that's there in plan administration and client roles to consult with clients on such things as plan design selections, figuring out a way to accomplish the client's outcome, but also creating a clear understanding of each party's roles and responsibilities. To offer services on the other bullets on the slide requires a review of additional participant data points and a process to review that plan's data more frequently than annually. As Aaron led into, clean participant data is driving the efficiencies of our businesses. A 316 offering that can offer payroll data reviews ensures that the correct data is transferring to all service providers and that timely contributions and loan payments are being submitted to the plan for the participants. 316s that offer eligibility determination services have not been universally adopted by the providers. Take a newly eligible employee, for example. The plan sponsor is responsible for providing plan documentation, enrollment kits, along with the initial notices, setting up the employee in the applicable systems. This one task could become a very time-consuming activity, and there's an opportunity to help guide plan sponsors in determining eligible and ineligible participants throughout the year. This is an area that's very common for mistakes to occur, especially in plans that have high number of rehires or participant movement. The final area to consider is what reporting is available from the 316 offering to share with your clients. How will you know that the 316 provider is completing all of the delegated tasks that they agreed upon on behalf of the client? So keep in mind that the DOL and the IRS failures that we talked about earlier, and understand what the service provider is offering and the roles and responsibility of each party in the arrangement.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. All good pieces to consider as you're vetting service providers. And I would point you back to that buyer's guide, in terms of questions that you should ask service providers to make sure the experience that you hire for your client really matches the expectation that you had on the front end. All right, before we break for some question and answer, we really want to highlight 4 areas you can take back to your client base and potentially make an impact by introducing 316 services. And I'm going to start us off really by identifying clients that have had historical compliance issues. Think of clients that have had a pattern of self-correction. Think of clients that have recently completed a DOL or IRS audit. There were probably some monetary outcomes, because of that. And then finally, think about clients that have engaged some of the voluntary correction programs at the IRS. And I'm going to highlight the DFVCP, the Delinquent Filer Voluntary Correction Program. If you're late filing your Form 5500, the penalties are substantial. They can range anywhere from $750 per day for small plan filer up to a couple $1,000s a day for large plan filers. And we recently had a client engage us that was a late filer with their prior service provider. The advisor on the plan had known us for a number of years and knew we were doing some good work in the 316 space, and they made an introduction for us. And as part of our 316 services, we do sign and file the Form 5500. And this plan sponsor had missed their 5500 filing deadline because they were out of the country on vacation. And this provided another layer of coverage and depth for them. So they were very interested in engaging 316 service with us to prevent a repeat of that situation. And then I think they really found it valuable too that we were able to take on some additional signing authority in terms of loans and distributions and other items related to the plan. The second thing we want to call your attention to is really think about clients that have run into some capacity challenges. This has to do with workload and attrition. I think of the small market, business owners wear many, many different hats, and usually operating their retirement plan is pretty low down the priority list. And then as we go up market into larger employers, we're starting to see some of an imbalance of HR, a number of HR people compared to the overall population. So Jessica, I'm going to have you chime in here and share a little bit more feedback on what we're seeing this time of year, with workload and attrition impacting plan sponsors.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So right now, we're in fourth quarter, and fourth quarter is not only an extremely busy time for advisors, it's also an extremely busy time for clients. If you think about it, they're responsible in the fourth quarter for filing and submitting their 5500. Determining and notifying participants of their RMD requirements, approving force-out distributions, compiling and distributing annual notices, requesting any plan corrections, and preparing for the 1/1 enrollments, all while performing their day job. This is where the value of 316 services is very visible and realized for a client. A recent email I received from an owner of a company simply stated, "It's a great time of the year to have 316 services." By understanding your client's challenges with capacity, you could determine how 316 services could lessen that workload to your clients. 316 services can also become an extension of your client, as if the team was sitting in the office with them all year long. Having that well-versed expertise in retirement plans who's only a phone call away can protect the plan from the costly errors and save them a variable time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jessica. I think you teed up some things real nicely there for our next area of identification, which is really the clients that are subject to an annual audit. I think of those large plan filers, multiple employer plans, which are typically large plan filers. There's just a lot of heavy lifting for the plan sponsor, especially this time of year. And if you've ever had any clients that are subject to a large plan audit, here's what they're going to face. Their CPA firm that they've engaged is likely going to push out a questionnaire to them. And there's going to be, between 20 and 30 different items that your client needs to retrieve or assemble or potentially respond to. And if you're working with a more robust 316 administrator like us at FuturePlan, we can step in front of your client and respond to the majority of those items for them. And I think that's going to bring a ton of value to your client. I think they're going to see the ROI that they spent on engaging 316 is really justified by helping them navigate that experience. And then Jessica, I'm going to have you chime in here on the last one. The last one is really identify clients where we can complement their existing service provider and add on. So I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit more there.
Yes, so we all know that service providers offer multiple platforms and systems to support the products that they offer. And not all technological platforms are built the same and offer the same type of oversight and reporting to assist plan sponsors. So clients that are wanting to offer competitive plans in the market to attract and retain talent in their organization often result in a complex plan. We're seeing value, as Aaron said, in providing 316 services to larger plans with a complexity that can challenge some of the service provider platforms offerings. A 316 service provider should understand the various platform capabilities and be able to offer a solution that complements both the firms and delivers on the client experience.
All right, thank you, Jessica. So we're almost at time, but before we break, I want to fish out a couple of the questions that you put in the chat for us here today. And, Jessica, I'm going to let you tackle this first one. This is a really good one. Someone's asked, do you have to be the payroll provider in order to offer 316 services? So Jessica, I'm going to let you tackle that one since you talked about data earlier.
Yeah, Aaron, that's a great question. We get that often. So providing 316 services does not require the offer to provide the payroll services. What a 316 should offer is technology that's available to share data securely, not to use email to transmit participant information, and then have some type of tool in place and process to check that participant data against the plan's provisions and the service provider data on a regular basis to keep the information clean.
Well said. It was just Cybersecurity Month a month ago, so good timing, good timing. The second question has been asked a couple of different ways. I'll maybe tackle this one. Essentially, what we're being asked is what market segments are we seeing 316 in? And I would say we're mostly seeing 316 upmarket. I think Jessica did a good job kind of outlining a lot of the different complexities that plans have. And as you get into larger participant counts, larger plans in general, you see more moving parts in terms of plan design, in terms of the administration of the plan, in terms of the workforce and the various service providers. So we're definitely seeing 316 upmarket. And the exception to that, we're actually seeing a lot of activity in the group negotiated contract space. And so group negotiated contracts have become real popular here in the last couple of years, where we're typically see not just micro plans, but we see a lot of small plans wanting to band together to look for that consistent, repeatable experience. And in those group negotiated contracts, we typically have some of the 316 services embedded in those arrangements. So we're seeing quite a bit of activity there as well. All right, and the final question, Jessica, I think I'm going to let you tackle this one. How important is tenure and experience as a 316 administrator?
Yeah, great question. So tenured and scaled 316 providers have the ability to leverage their history and the discipline to deliver on the same client experience for all clients. They tend to have dedicated associates on the teams. They have repeatable processes. They have invested in the technology and the reporting of their services. Newer firms that enter this have an opportunity cost as they build out their product offering by scaling, often offering exceptions to the service model that may change as they scale.
All right, so with that, it looks like we're at time. We really appreciate everybody's attendance today, your participation, and do not hesitate to reach out to us if there's any way that we can help you in the 316 space. And with that, I want to thank Jessica for also joining me today, and everybody make it a great day.